Tariq, Ed Oliver got himself in a little bit of an issue, a DUI, a gun charge. These days, do we care anymore?
We care if it's going to affect the regular season. And, one of the things that's going to happen is the NFL is going to go to the standard protocol, let the law do what it's supposed to do. I'm sure Ed Oliver is going to be at camp. I'm sure Ed Oliver is going to participate all the way up till the legal process is taken care of. I think they're probably going to, he's probably going to get a slap on the wrist. I don't think he's going to do some serious jail time or anything like that. Maybe a huge fine. They'll suspend him for 4 games. He'll have to fight that and go down to 2 games. So that's the first 2 games of the season for Ed Oliver to be out. Do we care, I guess, about how many games he's out, right, Duffy? I guess that would be the end of it, as long as it's not a problem, which I don't think it'll be for Ed Oliver in the future. It's not like he's got an ongoing issue.
Oh, I disagree with that. I think that we care more about what happens off the field with our players than we ever have. Like, it's easy to forget. Nate Newton, while playing for the Dallas Cowboys, I believe it was Nate Newton, was pulled over with a van full of marijuana. Like a van full of marijuana, and nobody really talked about it. Like, it was like a joke in the USA Today for 2 weeks, and that was the end of it, man. Like, the things that these guys, these athletes in all 4 sports used to get away with was jaw-dropping, because the argument was always like, well, they can play ball, who cares, everything's fine. The way that these 4 leagues now sell their athletes, right? It's not good enough that they throw the ball or they catch the ball or they tackle somebody. You need to personally invest in them for them to make more money off of these players. You have to care. And when you do care about that player as a human being, yes, it bothers you when they have a DWI, when they're accused of some kind of drug offense, when something goes on in their personal life. I think now it's a way bigger deal than it ever was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I may be going back farther than it matters, but I remember Paul Hornung, who was as an analyst after he's a Heisman Trophy winner of the 60s, but he was an analyst with Notre Dame football, and he went public with the point. He says, you know what, our players don't get into enough trouble, meaning like, they don't have an edge enough to make Notre Dame as a football power, unlike the University of Miami or some of these other teams, especially in the Southeast, that were really tough. He says, we need more guys who are going to get arrested. Tariq?
I don't think you need to be arrested, but you need to have an edge. And I think that's what, listen, we're dealing with football players. These guys go out there, put their bodies on the line, ultimate sacrifice. They go out there and do that every single week and prepare for it year round. So some of these guys aren't going to make great decisions, and some of them haven't. For the most part, though, a lot of players stay out of trouble. They don't get into situations like that. And when they do, they're human beings. I don't understand what I am not trying to minimize DUI or DWI or a weapons charge. I will just tell you this. We've had plenty of athletes do worse and get less.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair statement, but I don't know, man. Like, you're in a position of entitlement. Like, let's use Sammy Watkins as an example. A couple weeks ago, he puts out an article where he's just saying all kinds of crazy things that he believes in, right? Like, he's a flat earther, and he believes in, like, feelings that go throughout people's bodies. He has a quote that NFL games are played the night before in players' dreams. That wasn't, like, an analogy. He legitimately believed that. And it occurred to me as I'm reading this article, the reason why he feels the need to say these things out loud is he was such a good football player. Growing up his entire life, nobody had the stones to go up to him and go, hey, you know what you're saying is insane, right? Like, these guys are raised in an entitled situation where they get away with things and are allowed to do things no one else does. And when it catches up to them, in a professional sense, it makes it 1,000 times worse.
I do not go to my athletes and wonder about whether they think the earth is flat or round. I go to my athletes because I admire what they do on the field. They do great things off the field. I love them even more. But do I voice my political opinion based on whether or not an athlete supports this or supports that? No, I can't agree with all athletes. That's why we have different opinions.
Sure, totally fair statement. And look, I use the Sammy Watkins thing as just an example of, like, how does nobody tell you you're crazy? But, like, my daughter loves hockey, right? So when something happens to one of her favorite players, and Tariq, your kids watching the sports that you watch with your kids, right? Like, how am I supposed to explain? And I hate to be that guy, what about my kids? But I think I'm allowed to give pause when I have to explain to my child why this player did this. Why are they not the good person that we thought they were? Am I going to be allowed to do this? Things along that line. I know it's an oversimplification, but yeah, I think it matters.
Yeah, it goes back to the old Charles Barkley about saying, I don't want to be a role model. I don't feel responsible enough. These guys are who they are. I mean, they are who they are, right, Tariq?
Yeah, I just believe in a sense that, you know what, they're still human beings. As talented as they are, they're flawed, just like everybody else. I don't understand why we put them on such a high pedestal and say they're a great athlete, so they must be a great person. Not necessarily.